Coming up, what an excellent day for cookies and Coke. Well, howdy folks, and welcome to Minute 18 of The Exorcist Minute, a show where we endeavor to examine, extrapolate, and excavate The Exorcist minute by terrifying minute. My name is Lester Clark.
And I'm Keenan Diaz.
And we'll be your holy guides on this journey through what some have called the scariest movie of all time. Okay, so our minute starts with Chris and Reagan talking about getting a horse.
And it ends with a glimpse of that gloomy priest as he enters the subway.
Yeah, so we're back to what I still think is an ad-libbed conversation here between Burston and Blair.
Right, or like partially ad-libbed, right?
Partially, right? Like
augmented,
they had the groundwork, but they knew that they were going to deviate a little bit, right? There's even a bit where Kitty, who plays Sharon, says something off camera, and Linda sort of looks to her and back to Ellen, like she's trying to decide who she's supposed to be talking to in this moment. It plays out and eventually gets to Reagan asking for a horse. And we knew this was coming. This is the I want a pony trope. But then we remember, oh yeah, Chris McNeil can maybe actually afford a horse for her daughter if she's having dinner with the president.
And the problem why she can't get a horse is, because we're on a rental house right now in Washington. Sorry, honey.
Right. Not that it's not that it's a horse. It's that we're not in our actual home. Yeah. But even then, right? She answers, "We'll see." And it's also here revealed for the first time that they don't live in Washington.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. I mean, we know this from the book, and she says they definitely can't get a horse while they're in Washington, and maybe when they get home. So this isn't home. This is the first time that the movie has let us know that. So now Chris turns to Sharon, and they're talking about party invitations, and that's when Reagan grabs a cookie from the cookie jar and makes a run for it through the kitchen as Mom and Sharon try to grab her. She runs into the darkened foyer. Foyer. That's another word that I don't know how to pronounce.
Yeah. Both acceptable, I believe.
Okay, good. Foyer. And she tries this little maneuver at the foot of the stairs, but Mom catches her and wrestles her to the ground. And again, this is showing us the playful, loving relationship that mother and daughter share. They are very affectionate. There are so many times in this movie where you forget, oh yeah, Chris McNeil is this like big name actress, because you see her mainly in this role, the role of Mom. Again, like so much so that like whenever this movie is parodied, the whole like thing about her being a famous actress is kind of like taken out. She's just the mom, right?
Right.
Yeah. Again, this little interaction isn't in the screenplay, and I kind of like the decision to show that Reagan isn't as two-dimensional, like perfectly well-behaved child, right? She steals a cookie and she runs away, right? So a little bit of the devil already. Right?
Yeah, and it's not that she's a delinquent, right, or anything like that. Yeah, it's just avoiding either spectrum of that. She's a regular person, right?
Yeah, just a regular kid, right? And I even like, right, it almost seems like it was an excuse to have the chase, like the playing, like she didn't care about the cookie. She wanted, more playtime with Mom. Basically.
Right. She's trying to get caught. She's not like sneaking it, and then she's doing it as she's staring at her mother. She's pulling the cookie. Yeah, right.
Right.
And one thing that's really good about that in this minute and the previous minute, so the first time we get a real glimpse of the geography of the house as opposed to it being separate. We've had a scene in the kitchen, but now when Chris goes to look for Reagan, we see some of the house, and then in this minute when she goes to chase Reagan, we get some more of the house. And we start to feel like stairs. It actually flows together. Yeah, we see the stairs and where everything is. And in both of them, even though we're not quite in horror mode, right? We don't have any musical stings under it. We have great shots like between this, from this doorway looking into the foyer, and it is very dark. It is noticeably dark. So even though we're not like necessarily trying to go for a chill or a jump scare here,
right,
we still get the sense that like, hey, remember, like this is a haunted house movie.
Yes. I didn't even think about that. Why not light the foyer? It's like, are you trying to save money, Chris McNeil? Like, what are you doing?
In theory, she's just come from it, right? So if she is coming in and coming from work, she probably has turned it on, right? But no, that's not as good as, it being a little spookified.
Yeah, it's nice and dark, right? All right. So from here, we cut to an underground subway station. the screen is awash in these grays and whites and electric blue. A lone figure emerges from the steps, and yes, before that pillar can hide him from our view, here's the real thing, Coca-Cola, travel refreshed. We see that, yes, it is our gloomy priest, the one that Chris noticed, and the one that we have been waiting so patiently to learn about. Ah,
Can I talk about Coca-Cola?
sure. It's a real thing, travel refreshed.
It's a real thing. I had a thought, I like these dinner party sort of thought experiments where people go around and like one time my friend Cody LaBeouf, the director, said to everyone on set, he went around and asked like, if you could have one tree in your yard, what kind of tree would it be? And I think his was like a shade tree. He would like a tree with shade, and some people wanted a tree that their kids could climb. And I wanted the lemon tree. A lemon tree sounded the best to me.
Oh yeah.
And then you're like, why did I say that? Right. So once someone asked, what would you like at your if you were getting executed, like in your last meal?
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
Right. It is. So what would Coca-Cola? Coca-Cola is my favorite food. And that's the first thing that came to mind is I would want a Coca-Cola right before that. And do you have an answer for that? Can I ask you that? I wasn't thinking I would, but what would you want in your last meal, Lester?
Oh, damn.
Knowing it's your last meal.
Wow. Let's see. Okay. So this is a meal. So not like a drink, but like
anything you want. Yeah. But I was kind of struck by how the first thought was the drink that I would have, which was my favorite food, Coca-Cola. Yeah.
God, I have like various favorites on various days.
See, so if I were to finish it, it would be Coca-Cola, some mochi, and some gummy bears like that.
Okay.
Those would be my comfort things that I would want to leave this mortal coil with.
I think it would be like, like maybe mom's home cooked like Thanksgiving dinner, which just adds another sad layer to it. Oh my God.
Well, it's very sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was like a picture article is where this came from for me of like them hearing what real convicted killers were getting for their last meals and then taking pictures of it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And a couple of them, it was like refused. So it was just a blank jailhouse tray. I was like, yeah, they didn't want one. But anyways, I was struck by seeing Coca-Cola here. I mean, you must have been as well, right? To mention it.
A little bit. Yeah. I was like, I mean, yeah, I made a whole gag about it. Yeah.
It's weird it's weird how it takes us out a little bit. And it's like, oh, now I'm thinking about the real world. But what's weirder is actually, this idea that we have movies that don't have advertising anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the late 70s, I would say, when you look at like Poltergeist, which is an 80s movie, but there are brands all over Poltergeist. And I feel like Spielberg is somebody who started to like accept that, well, if we're going to show the real world, it should have advertising in it. We should have like his version of Halloween isn't, oh, here's a witch and here's a ghost, a spooky ghost or something. His version of Halloween in E.T. is, well, there are Yodas everywhere.
Yes.
And, right, that's what his life is like. So I know part of that is like a shift in the way the world looked in the late 1970s into the 80s, but also like what we did in media to show that. So, even if we're shooting in a real subway station as we are, we could have covered up the Coca-Cola sign.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But it would not necessarily been as real, with the capital R.
Yes. Right. Because I mean, we have to remember that like this movie is trying to draw us in and make us believe that, this is a real place with real people. And in a real subway station, you would have signs for, Coca-Cola. Here's the real thing. Travel refreshed.
and not here's the vending machine for cola.
Yeah. Right.
Right. That's not how the world works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's this weird, right? It's this weird like paradox that advertising takes us out of the movie, while at the same time it is more realistic.
Yes,
we just, as a convention, don't see real brands or the real names of real restaurants in a movie.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, like potentially dangerous. I mean, not in the case of, Coca-Cola. Here's the real thing. Travel refreshed, but like it could potentially date it because some of these things might not be around in a while, right?
Right. That's a really good point. You do see that kind of thing happen sometime where like, oh, that's an old brand or that's a, something that I was just thinking about was the DeLorean.
Yes.
Which we now exclusively associate with Back to the Future.
Right.
If we saw somebody on the street driving a DeLorean, we would say, oh, he likes that car because of Back to the Future and not the other way around. Right. But that could have been completely dated. And I think that they're, in Back to the Future, they're being smart because that's already not a cool car by the time that they're making that movie. It's already supposed to be like an old, outdated idea. And then they make it timeless.
Yes. Yeah.
So anyways, I had to look it up because I forgot when this happened, but I don't know if you know, but Coca-Cola bought Columbia Pictures
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that was unfortunately that was in 1982. So it's not relevant here, but Coca-Cola was one of the parent companies of a studio at a time when most of the studios became corporate owned. So I went to the Coca-Cola Museum. Sorry, I'm hijacking the podcast to talk about Coca-Cola, but then I'm just admitting like, hey, I went to Atlanta on vacation with my boyfriend, and the thing I wanted to see the most was the Coca-Cola Museum because it's my favorite thing. So
Coca-Cola, if you're out there, we don't have a sponsor yet.
right,
Just
all this
saying.
buzz marketing
Just
for
saying.
you,
I don't know
yes.
if you want to be associated with like a green pea soup spewing,
Oh my goodness,
demon,
exactly.
but
But you're in the movie. You're
you're
in The
in the movie
Exorcist.
already.
It's
So
not us
yeah.
doing it, yeah. But I went to the Coca-Cola Museum, and one of the things they have in there is the Best Picture Oscar for Gandhi.
Ooh.
So in their museum, amongst like frisbees with Coca-Cola on it, and
Right.
like all this other like merchandising, there's an Oscar, and it's because they owned Columbia Pictures when they won Best Picture for
Oh,
Gandhi.
wow.
So it's just amongst all the other junk.
Whew. I mean, yeah, wow. Yeah. And folks, if you're wondering why we're talking so much about Coca-Cola,
Which is not a sponsor.
which is not a sponsor, although it could be, I wouldn't mind that. Just saying. It's because this is where our minute ends, and this is a really awkward place. I was so on the fence for so long about whether or not we should introduce this character in this minute or just wait for the next one. We only see him for literally 10 seconds here, and some of that is behind this subway pillar. Here's the real thing: Coca-Cola, travel refreshed. And so it feels weird to do a whole like character study on the character who technically hasn't yet been revealed to us.
Right.
So here's what I'm going to do. We have seen enough of this actor for us to give you his story, and then we're going to get into the character that he plays in the next few minutes. Because let me tell you, after this minute, he is in it, and we are not going to be able to get away from him. So
That's
we're
right.
going to hear all about Father Karras, all about Dimmy for a long time. So buckle up. But
Okay,
but right now, let's take a look at this actor, Jason Miller. So he was born in Queens, raised in Scranton, Pennsylvania, where he attended yet another Jesuit-run university, University of Scranton, Pennsylvania. He goes back to New York to work as an actor in off-Broadway and off-Broadway. And when he's not acting, he's delivering milk, barely scraping by, while living with his wife and 2 kids, one of whom is Jason Patric, by the way.
Right.
Now, he is also a playwright, and at this time, he has written a play called That Championship Season, which wins him the Tony Award and the Pulitzer Prize, and this is all before The Exorcist.
Oh, right. And so he is married to the daughter of Jackie Gleason, who is the star of The Honeymooners. Yeah, so Jason Patric is the grandson of Jackie Gleason. And yeah, I want to talk about that championship season because it's a really good play. And it speaks a little bit to how people perceived Jason Patric. I'm sorry, not Jason Patric, the father.
Jason Miller.
Oh my goodness. It speaks a little bit to Jason Miller, how people saw him as a jock. And when Friedkin is describing like what he likes about Jason Miller, part of it is that he is not a feeble-looking priest like Father Marin. As he knows he's going to cast, like he looks like an athlete.
He looks like Rocky.
He looks like Rocky. That's a really good point. Yeah, he looks like Rocky.
Yeah, it's a very like Sylvester Stallone. Like if I didn't know any better, like I would almost like if I squint my eyes and look sideways, I'd be like, didn't know Stallone was in this movie.
This is Stallone, yeah. So that championship season is a really, really good play, and it is about a high school basketball team that had won the championship and their coach, and now it is something like 10 or 15 years later, and they're all grown up, and it's about what it's like to become a grown up after living as a basically a child athletic star, a college athletic star, and what it's like as you're coming down from all of that. And it's the team plus the coach, and they're waiting on the 5th person on the basketball team to come in. It's sort of like the Iceman Cometh, where you're talking the entire time about this person, and when he gets here, we're going to actually start the party, and they start to bring up ideas that are really deep that go into art as well, of like, would we have been okay if our coach wasn't such a jackass to us, or like controlling, semi-abusive father figure to us. Like, could we have done it without that? And people say, yes, we could have. And that this time we had with our coach was really abusive and awful, and they're saying it to the coach, right? Which is what makes a good play. And some people saying like, no, coach made us who we are. And the coach is like, yeah, I did that for you. And did you really do it for you? Did you do it for us? Were we just pawns for you? Really, really deep, fun, dramatic play. And so that's how people saw him, was like, oh, you must be like one of these people. And he was an athlete of sorts, and was writing about the school that he had grown up with, similar like how Blatty is writing about the school that he went to undergrad at.
Right. And he does go back. I think, like, I was reading his bio, and he goes back to Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Right.
And he, I think he becomes like an acting teacher over there.
That's what I understand too, right?
Yeah. So
home of Joe Biden, home of Jason Miller, yes.
There we go. And Jason Patrick, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. So, back in New York, around this time, Billy Friedkin is also in New York, and he sees Jason Miller's picture in the New York Times, and so he sets up a meeting, which ends up being kind of lukewarm by all accounts. Friedkin wasn't too impressed. Miller had not read The Exorcist. Friedkin said, read it. Then a little bit later, Friedkin gets this call, and it's Jason Miller. And he finally read the book, and hey, guess what? Just like Ellen Burstyn from before, Jason Miller insists that he is that guy, that young priest. He is Father Karras. Thing is, though, he isn't. They had already given that role to Stacy Keach. But Jason Miller begs Friedkin to reconsider, begs him to do at least one screen test, and Friedkin agrees. And Miller, sighing with relief, says, "Great, I'll see you in a week." And he takes a train because he's afraid to fly.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
he's a train guy like Joe Biden.
He's a train guy like Joe Biden.
Zone,
yeah. Which, by the way, this scene with him opens up with the subway train coming right towards the screen. Oh my God!
Right. Yeah.
Right? But I also like it. We zoomed right past this, and I want to talk about this. I like how there's a scene with Marin wandering through the ruins of the temple, and he kind of gets like swallowed up by this pillar, right?
Right.
And the same kind of thing happens to Father Karras as he's entering this subway platform, and this pillar just kind of like hides him from our view.
Yeah, it's certainly a good strategy that the movie has. Even in the Chris scenes, we talked about when she comes out of the bedroom and we are shooting between the railing of the landing,
right?
And we don't realize that until the camera starts to move. And in our previous minute, as she's coming in and seeing Sharon, we have these foreground elements that are innocuous, like flowers or that kind of thing. But we certainly are a fan in this movie about hiding people behind foreground elements as the camera moves. And that's interesting, that story you're talking about, right? Because Jason Miller's a playwright. Sure, he's an actor, but he's famous for being a playwright. And then we have Friedkin seeing his picture and seeing like, oh, this is a guy I want to have a conversation with, even though he's more known as a playwright, because he has that sort of look, that athletic look. And Stacy Keach, who gets the role first, is known for that. His most famous movie up to this point was as a boxer in this movie called Fat City. So again, trying to make sure that Father Karras is playing by a guy's guy, a dude's dude.
Yeah, and we assume that Jason Miller's picture was in the paper probably because of that championship season.
Probably, right.
But yeah, so he ends up coming to LA and he does the screen test, and the test turns out to be amazing. So much so that Friedkin goes to Warner Brothers. By this time, they got to be already so tired of this guy. And he convinces them to pay off Stacy Keach and cast Jason Miller. And this with the help of Blatty, who agrees that the actor for Karras should be relatively unknown.
Right.
And so, another miracle, another actor has found their way into this movie against all odds. And I am so excited because in these upcoming minutes, we're going to see a lot of Jason Miller as, yes, Father Karras, who I think may be my favorite character. I think I may have said that about other characters in the past. I can't remember. But I think Father Karras is my favorite character.
We were talking before, I forget which minute we were talking about, but like the idea of like, oh, we want to tell the story about this young Orson Welles type director who's going against the studio and the studio's interfering. But here you have another instance where it's like, hey, we need to fire this actor and pay him off his salary. And the studio's like, okay, here's the money.
Right.
right? Because the studios at this point are being controlled by people who sort of agree with the Orson Welles myth of like, hey, let's get out of these people's control, get out of their way and give them a lot of control. And it has paid off for them economically.
Precisely, yeah. So yeah, there probably was a little bit of pushback, but I mean, Friedkin got his way, and Jason Miller got into the movie, just like Ellen Burstyn.
Right. There's the subway system thing, and we have a lot of transitions where we have these planes, as you were pointing out, right? These plane noises. So I did look it up, and I was trying to see like where the Washington D.C. airports were, and they are nowhere near Georgetown in Northwest. There's the Baltimore airport that I flew into Baltimore in and got lost in Baltimore, which I wouldn't recommend. Don't get lost in Baltimore, which is on the other side. That's more like to the east of where Washington is. There's Reagan National, which is to the south, and then there is Dulles, which is the main airport at this time, and it's in Virginia. It's way to the east. So these airplane, I was thinking like, oh yeah, are these airplane noises that we pointed out, is that because that's what you would hear in Georgetown, and maybe Blatty is like, that's just natural, but not really. No, these are additions. They're additions to it, because you wouldn't be able to hear a plane taking off or landing the way that you can at my university, UNLV, which is constantly beset by plane noises. So
yes, yeah, I remember that as well when I was in Vegas.
It's fun for the film students as they're out there trying to film things.
Oh, that's gotta be like just dandy.
Yeah. And DC has this lovely subway system. I know if you're from DC, you probably hate me saying that, because wherever you are, you hate your bus system or you hate your subway system. Yeah. But I was struck by that, having no subway system in Vegas, and then having a pretty subpar subsystem in LA, as you know, where you can ride the subway, but only if you're going from very particular places to very particular places.
Wait, we have a subway system?
Yeah, you could take it from downtown to further downtown. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. I think we have you beat. LA has you beat for like the worst like transportation. It's like,
yeah, DC. I love DC's subway system. I can get around really well with that. So I know it. I was taking it as a tourist, and I've heard from people who live there that like if you're a commuter, it breaks down all the time or what have you. Or there was a mysterious fire all of a sudden. And all that. But in the meantime, it took me to the mall just fine. I went from the Georgetown area when I was staying at American University, so it's in Northwest, and I got down to the mall just fine.
The first, I think I was spoiled. The first subway system I ever like interacted with was when I was in Japan, and it's just like, oh, you want to get here, you want to get there. It's like and they're always on time, and they're nice and clean, and everything like that. And then I went from Japan to Hong Kong, and Hong Kong was like again, it was just another like very neat, nice. Efficient subway system. I didn't even have a car in Hong Kong. I just walked everywhere and took the train. And then I come to LA and I'm like, well, this map says this is 45 minutes away, so I'm not going to get there today.
But that's let me sorry to distract that much, but yeah, when you look at the movie, right, like the subway system here is like this place of isolation and loneliness, and no one is on the train, and there's no one in the station. So I like that. It's like you're saying, it's very similar to the Iraq sequences. It's where, I mean, this guy is alone with his thoughts, and anything that's haunting him, it comes out of the subway because it's such a terrible place. Right.
And it's subterranean, it's underground, it's gloomy. It has like the colors and everything like that. But yeah, no, it was definitely a choice to have him. We meet him here, under the earth, so to speak.
Right. These are the first scenes with him as the point of view character.
Yeah. All right. So, Keenan, are you thinking what I'm thinking?
I think I am, Lester.
Okay, so folks, until next time, the power of Coca-Cola compels you.
Here's the real thing. Travel refreshed.
Sponsor us, Coca-Cola. We need sponsors. Please sponsor us. We really appreciate it. We love you.
That's very funny.